So again, welcome everyone to our phenomenal July ASQ Innovation Division webinar session. Today we have our infamous Mr. Walia, who will be speaking about real-world AIML case studies across industry and life sciences. You are in for such a treat because he has a phenomenal background, not only within regard to commercial firms where he is the VP and digital governance local equity partner and head of PQE of the Chicago office, but a seasoned life science industry leader. He has multiple decades worth of experience spanning research and development in IT. He has served in many different senior leadership roles, including the director of quality. He has a cross-functional perspective that bridges across many different areas of digital transformation, innovation, quality, and excellence. His deep expertise lies in AI/ML applications within the life sciences space. And he is, again, a multi-practitioner depth. You can connect with him on LinkedIn as a trusted advisor and a practitioner passionate about helping organizations move beyond theory to operationalizing AI and ML. So without further ado, let's welcome to our digital ASQ Innovation webinar stage today, Mr. Walia.
Thank you, Dr. Rhonda. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see folks from around the world. Allow me just to quickly share my screen so we can begin the presentation. Okay. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen. If I can get a confirmation from someone, I'd appreciate it, or Dr. Rhonda.
We are actually seeing you still, Mr. Walia.
Oh, seeing me, okay. Let's try that again.
We saw your deck for a moment and then it disappeared.
Do you see the deck now?
Perfect, yes.
Does it change when I go to presentation mode?
It's still in that slide. Yes, so now we're back to only seeing you.
Okay, really strange. I don't know why it's not showing it in presentation mode. Let me see if I change. And now, did it do anything different?
No, we still see you.
Okay, let's try one more time.
Okay, we can see that. There we go, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. Let me just activate my pointer. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So today we're, as Dr. Rhonda had indicated, we'll talk about real-life case studies in AI. Recently at the World American Society for Quality conference down in Orlando, I did a spotlight presentation with one of my colleagues regarding not only real-life case studies, but the process of AI. It also included other industries. I will make some comments about other industries such as, aerospace, automotive, and so forth. The focus of today, though, will be on life science, but always remember that irregardless of the industry type, technology and the concept behind them are very similar, right? They can be applied elsewhere. At the beginning of my career, I often used to read publications from all the industries outside of the one I worked in. Why? Because oftentimes somebody's already done something before you, and it's always good to learn from the lessons from before. So, quick introduction of myself. I'm Gaurav Walia. I've been in the industry for the last 29 years, and I have been involved in many activities, from being a former director of research and development, inventing new drugs for major companies such as Pfizer. Some of the drugs I helped invent are on TV today. I've also been a former director of quality with over 100 FDA inspections. I have also dealt with major pharmaceutical companies where they get in trouble, and they call that consent decree, where in some cases those sites were shut down for 3, 4, 5 years where they couldn't sell products. In those cases, it was about technology and the data that the technology produces and the result and the actions that take place when we talk about data, right? So whether it impacts the product, the patient, the safety, or the data generation in itself. I've also been a regional director of IT, and today, as Dr. Rhonda indicated, I'm currently the vice president of PQE Group. PQE Group is a international life science consultancy firm with 51 offices in the world. I head up the largest North American office of 9 here in Chicago. Extracurricular wise, I'm part of obviously the American Society for Quality, where I serve in different divisions, as well as obviously the innovation division, where I'm the secretary. In a couple of years, I'll be the chairman. I belong to the software division as well as the AI subcommittee. And then, even though I'm not an engineer, I'm part of the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineers, where I'm the chairman and founding member of Mentor ISP. I think to date, we've mentored over 1,000 young professionals and students from around the world. So we often look for mentors and mentees as well. And I'm part of 5 communities of practice of AI and the digital validation subcommittee. So the 5 communities of practice of AI focus on things like literacy and education, data science, validation, regulatory, etc. So overall, I've gone through exploratory training of inspectors from the FDA in the last few years, where I've done exploratory training on data and technology for 2 days. All right, let's move on. So what is AI, right? AI, the term AI has actually been around for a long time. It's been around since 1950, believe it or not, right? And the origination of AI was the goal of creating machines that can think like humans. Um, Still debatable whether that can be done. Don't think it's the same, but similar, let's say. Key milestones. So that term was coined at the Dartmouth Conference in 1956. Then IBM's Deep Blue defeated a world chess champion. So we saw the first instance in 97 about a computerized system defeating a human, right? Then got a little bit more mainstream, where the popular US TV show called Jeopardy that you may have seen, that's still on TV today. IBM's Watson defeats the Jeopardy champion. Furthermore, in 2012, we had deep learning breakthrough in image recognition, and I'll get to that. I'll come back to that in a moment. Really, the word AI became more mainstream, or some version of AI, with things like ChatGPT. Today, we have many other similar type products in the market. In my opinion, what happened is this socialized the technology, right? Probably more often than not, people are utilizing this for more personal use. But if I go back to 2012, I remember reading an article not in 2012, but maybe 5 years later. So in around 2017, I had read some research regarding this deep learning breakthrough in image recognition. So what it did is it showed that um, they were able to train or basically start with machine learning on a computerized data platform and train the model against known images of cancer and different types of cancer. And eventually, the AI was able to uh, quickly look at a scan or some type of image and be able to deduce that somebody had cancer. Now, here's the main point of the story. They were able to predict or be able to conclude that somebody had early stages of cancer 6 months prior to any test available in the world that currently existed. So this was 14 years ago, mind you, right? So I think it's important to show the history of evolution of technology as well as practical application. So if we look at, we'll start high level and kind of zoom in as we have the conversation today. We'll talk about different use case areas as well as specific examples that are being utilized. I'll share some light of what our organization has done within PQE as well, just to show a compare and contrast, and kind of give forward-looking statements towards the end in terms of where that roadmap is going. And so today, there's many different ideas. Most folks are experimenting with ideas and use cases of where do I apply AI. So some folks may use it as you see in the next few slides in more simpler, let's call them low-hanging fruit or quick wins of how to write a procedure or how to analyze if somebody's following a procedure. Um, at the same time, some people are going for the more critical applications, the ones that are more difficult, right out the gate. So one would be cleaning validation. At least in the FDA regulated industry in the last few years, contamination has been one of the top subjects or warning letter items, meaning that they found several instances where companies are having contaminated products. In some case, those contaminations are killing people, right? So there was cough syrup that killed over 500 children under the age of 5 in over 6 continents just a few years ago. Around 2 years ago in the United States, we had eye drops that were contaminated that caused blindness or even in some cases death. So these are just some examples of where AI can analyze data to identify trends, to predict potential issues that may pop up, and ensure that the that the manufacturing or the equipment that's being used to make that product is free of contaminants. Moving on, you'll see some examples later in the presentation that focus on process validation. So some of the AI algorithms can analyze the data of the process of the manufacturing in itself. It can look at critical parameters and even look at deviations in the process, which are more quality oriented, that could also even affect the product. Ultimately, you'll see specific examples from industry that show reliable manufacturing with the use of AI on vision systems that's able to eliminate or reduce some of the defects that maybe don't get seen today or that get result in complaints or issues in the market. Furthermore, this is a little bit more earlier in the first two stages we talked about, but it's about predictive modeling. So in many cases in drug discovery or even the drug development process, metabolism, tox studies, and different properties of how the drug behaves is something that is beneficial to use AI to in order to kind of predict what future state might be or what may happen, right? To give early sets of information and data to make more educated decisions on which candidates I may move forward in my drug development pipeline versus others. Next, we'll look at data analysis interpretation. Again, this is kind of somewhere in the middle in the drug development lifecycle in terms of, you'll see an example of PQEs where we worked on a project where we're taking structured and unstructured research data in order to devise conclusions. You'll also see a case study that will focus on a real life case study of a product that was using AI in order to even help select the folks or the patients that would be better candidates for that drug based on brain biomarkers. So as we kind of move ahead, if we look at an AI revolution in quality management, here's some interesting facts. Even every time I give a presentation about AI, I conclude this slide, and what surprises me is the second bullet point. Quality processes generate massive data, but in the last approximately 2 years, 90% of the world's data has been created. It means that the volume of data we're creating today is continually increasing dramatically, exponentially, almost to the point where a human can't realistically digest that information in an efficient timeline. So this is where we struggle with traditional analyses and processes being able to meet the needs that we have as industry, right? And on top of that, as we increase the complexity of our supply chain process, our drug development process, even the manufacturing process with technology, it means that today we're a world market, right? Most companies operate in a world platform or selling to multiple countries, or many people are consuming those products. And so the complexity becomes quite important in that algorithm, if you will. Furthermore, there's rising customer expectations for quality. As not only are people more fussy about what they consume, but they're more loyal to brands that have less issues and they're safe, right? And so if you combine the rising customer expectation with rising regulatory pressure, obviously, if you have 500 children dying in 5 continents, it becomes more spotlight, right? Certain age groups, everybody's life is important, but if you have elderly people, you have young children that are being affected by products in the market. Today, with the rise of social media, it's very quick to go around the world and affect somebody's their reputation in the industry. So ultimately, we look at the cost of quality and we look for improved metrics for quality and delivery. We're looking to reduce the cost of what not only the process in itself, but the quality process in itself, as well as the ability to digest this huge amount of data, right? And AI can significantly reduce it, as you'll see in the presentation. Furthermore, in the next two categories, we talk about, moving from a reactive to a proactive quality management program, right? Or being able to have early detection in order to avoid some of those domino effect issues that may come up later on as a complaint or an adverse event or something when it's already been delivered to the market. You'll see an example by Pfizer regarding predictive maintenance, reducing downtime, as well as some data decision-making processes in order to support a enhanced quality culture while optimizing process. So some of the benefits of using AI in the pharmaceutical in validation is to automate tasks, to reduce manual effort. It doesn't mean to replace the human. Now, I know I can't see the chat window right now as I'm presenting. We'll come back to that at the end of the call, unless somebody, if Dr. Rhonda asks a question while I'm speaking, I'm happy to answer it. But there was a question before we started regarding people having better access to technology on their phones than the companies giving them the option to utilize it. I do agree with that. I think there are some companies that are the leaders in the market, as you'll see in this presentation, and they're a little bit more advanced to giving the tools. Because first you have to decide where do you want to start, right? But even before that, honestly, it's the education of the people and developing that culture of technology and quality and even efficiency. You can't, if you've rode a horse for the last 30 years and never driven a car, I can't just give you a car today and expect you to drive it. You have to be familiar with it, play around with it, and work in an environment that's not so critical upon first use. I think it needs to be more experimental. Um, so there are companies that have released technologies in very specific use cases. I think the problem today is what happens, especially in larger companies or even mid-sized companies, is the following. One, there's people are not even trained, or there's no program for AI education and literacy. Two, maybe the most they have is a Copilot or ChatGPT, which I'm not saying it's bad, but it's limited, right? And I think the main there was a Fortune article that just came out, and it talked about where the gap in the industry is, and the gap from a leadership perspective is that the gap is identified as the following: that there's not a kind of transparent communication from the senior leaders within organizations in terms of what's the future vision, where are the applications they may be focusing on, and then providing those tools to start experimenting with, even in a sandbox or experimental type environment. So I think the answer to the question in the chat was about manufacturing systems and technology with AI. Oftentimes, this poses a very high risk, right? Because if you utilize it in a live mode, producing product, and it makes a mistake today, when we're still quite immature, both in the regulation as well as the technology. And of course, the companies themselves don't have processes, validation framework, as well as education to really allow you to drive that car properly. So uh, it's a matter of developing the people, the tech, and the framework around it. So we'll continue on as we get through the presentation, but some of the AI is looked at improving accuracy, right? Better results than the human itself. You know, that same Fortune study showed that 48% of employees today, where they're running AI algorithms or experiments, that they're purposely being sabotaged. And 29% of that 48 are Gen Z, basically from 16 to 24, right? Some of those people may not be working yet, but it was quite interesting. And there was at least for me, it was a new term that I just learned this week. They had the term called FOBO, fear of becoming obsolete. Now, here's the raw data. Gartner study has shown that only 1% in the world of layoffs is actually attributed to AI. So I think some people just point the finger and think they use it as an excuse, but it's not the reality. So ultimately, what we're using AI for is a tool to help augment the delivery, the analyses. It doesn't mean the humans not need. Most FDA regulations for critical data require human or human in the loop or expert in the loop. It means that the review or the approval has to come from a human today. Will it change in the future? My opinion is yes. There will be revised regulation in the future. Future could be 5 years, 10 years from now. So the revision means that we will have to optimize our processes. And in some cases, yes, if you have confident results, then why not have autonomous decisions, right? It doesn't mean for everything. It doesn't mean that the humans will disappear. This is not a movie. So reduced cost ultimately is probably one of the primary drivers today when we talk about AI, and reducing waste, resource utilization, and better product quality. We also look at enhanced safety and deviations, make sure that we're meeting the regulations. And because in our life science industry, you make life-saving products that also could damage a human, we have to make sure that that using an advanced technology doesn't makes us better, not worse. Faster time to market, of course, this is another advantageous point, there are some companies that recently have invested $4 billion in AI discovery to help basically to give you a Lamborghini of cars to help you win the race, right? More or less. So here's the first case study. As I said, we'll start at 30,000 feet. This is non-life science case study, but I thought it was valuable. In 2019, Walmart used their point of sale and ERP systems in order to look at thousands of stores and predict demand, as well as the objective was to reduce food waste and waste of money. Ultimately, it was looking at implementing AI and machine learning for inventory management as well as demand forecasting. They wanted to also improve what's on the shelf and what's needed or not needed in terms of outputting the proper sales. Ultimately, what they did is they looked at multiple sources of information. They integrated their data systems in order to evaluate the sale of the products, weather forecasts, local events, and historical sales data. The idea and the software would adjust in real time. For example, there's a cold streak in Florida, and suddenly there's a shortage of oranges, and the prices are going up, or the supply chain is going down, and so maybe it's ordering more quantities of that, knowing that it's going to spike the price. Ultimately, in 1 year, Walmart saved $86 million in this first time out of the box case study. So if we look at AI in action, specifically in the quality space, we look for the following pillars. Visual inspection, you'll see a case study regarding that in regards to producing a more sound product. I'll keep it maybe at 15,000 feet and basically show you that there was several case studies where it's able to find 200% more defects than the current process. Similarly, in real-time monitoring, we found that continuous AI on production or manufacturing data yielded a 15% improvement right out of the box. Looking at complaint handling, I work with companies that have 10,000 complaints a month around the world with many different products. And so, again, it's a lot of information for a human to digest. The purpose of this AI is to triage the complaints coming in to ensure either whether they're inquiry or a genuine complaint, and then to risk assess the complaint and the level of criticality against that complaint in order to escalate it to a human for those things that are most impactful. Predictive maintenance, again, you'll see some example of 30% cost reduction, and also not just about the cost reduction, it's about the effective resource management, equipment uptime, as well as the ability to predict how much product I can put out into the market in the time frame that I have with not more surprises. As I mentioned earlier, document management. Some people are automating quality review of documents utilizing AI. We'll talk about that in a moment, but also even to help write and analyze SOPs and even references to SOPs to ensure that they're aligned. Lastly, ultimately, all of these put together can help in the overall supply chain and QA and quality issues, right? If the AI can predict what's needed in the market, similar to the Walmart issue, as well as control some of the variables in the manufacturing and review process, you can help eliminate or avoid. As you may know, working in a regulated FDA industry, we often have reports of drug shortages in the world for quality of life and life-saving drugs. So ultimately, we're looking to reduce waste and cost reduction, optimize the resource and automated inspections, efficiency gains, quicker production cycles, quicker batch releases, less documentation errors, deviations, regulatory issues, as well as better streamlined processes. When we look at ROIs, we look at things like what's the reduced operational cost? What's the increased production output or manufacturing output? What's the quality enhanced delivery that we can bring that even sometimes a human could miss, right? Then this ultimately gives you a competitive advantage in the market by enhancing customer satisfaction and loyalty. ultimately, the quality improvement process helps us, as you've already seen, to get fewer defects, early detection of issues. So maybe you can even fix it on the fly, right? And again, delivering better consistent product quality for customer overall brand loyalty and satisfaction. So now let's get into some of the case studies, right? So I've been alluding to visual inspection. So um, AstraZeneca has implemented an AI-based visual inspection system that helps improve defect detection. Ultimately, they were looking at their previous process had human inspectors looking at defects from tablets, capsules, packaging, and in this case, they were able to improve the process by detecting 70% more defects compared to the manual process. The next example talks about predictive maintenance. As I alluded to, Pfizer reported a 20% reduction in unplanned downtime after implementing an AWS tool that allows for a couple of AWS tools that allows for monitoring of analyzing via sensors of equipment data to predict potential failures before they occur. It's not the exact same example, but imagine you having a sensor in your car. Now you have sensors that tell you air pressure, right? Imagine you having a similar sensor in a car that's able to tell you 2 months before your tire is about to pop. This is the type of analysis that is currently going on. What it does is it optimizes the resource. It's better planning for how many products I can make. There's less downtime. And ultimately, when you have more, when you're driving your car, you can get to where you want to go. When that tire pops in that moment, it delays your schedule, just like it does in manufacturing. So ultimately, we're looking at process optimization, right? How do we produce better yields in the stuff we're making? How do we reduce variability? In this case, in this particular example, Merck used AI to optimize vaccine production, to analyze the manufacturing data and optimize process parameters. Today, we do it based on historical data, based on actual process data. It doesn't mean on a given day that that can't be, maybe the material's a little drier, a little wetter, maybe it needs to go 2 minutes longer to dry or 2 minutes less. So we can optimize the process. We can see drifts in the data and the results to help reduce the variability. Maybe it gives me maybe it's not out of spec, but it could give me a red flag when something is starting to turn in a way that maybe we need to stop and take a look because we don't want to generate bad product. So this kind of attributes, kind of continues that process in terms of real-time quality monitoring, right? Looking at critical quality attributes in manufacturing to allow for immediate corrective actions or close to it. Johnson & Johnson implemented an AI-based real-time monitoring system that reduced quality deviations by 35%. Now, we can't forget in all these examples, there's also the importance of regulatory compliance. And so in this case, Novartis used AI algorithms to assist with, very simply put, today you can create agentic AI that can look at your procedures, the methods, the specifications, the regulations, and it can look at your documentation, your batch record. It can look at where there's issues, right, as the data is being generated. Once the document is electronically in the system, the AI automatically recognizes there's a new document. It knows to analyze it. The agents that are programmed against different aspects of regulatory compliance. It could be critical quality attributes, etc., or specifications, can analyze and notify the human if there's something of concern as it's happening or close to it. So again, if I in the last slide I talked about predictive maintenance. I'll drill a little further. There's some other specific. This is more a take-home slide, but I'll cover some of the items. So it's ensuring continuous production. It's making sure that my car has a better lifespan, reducing the maintenance cost, which is also a big cost savings, as well as ensuring the overall return on investment. And maybe there's a problem where maybe one of those defects or deficiencies is causing a contaminant in the process, right? So this could ultimately help with your product quality. So if we drill even further down, this is the actual case study that I'm speaking about. So Pfizer scientists utilized AI for a patient-centric innovation and life science center with utilization of specifically generative AI. And it was able to detect anomalies in this patient-centric module of manufacturing in order to predict maintenance needs, reduced equipment downtime, and it was built on an AWS platform called Amazon Lookout for Equipment, in which it was a monitoring service that detects abnormal equipment behavior. Doesn't mean it's causing bad product or it's the car tire has popped, but it means that it's getting indicators that something is eventually going to go wrong, right? And this means that we can kind of also attribute what that data connects to what the eventual root causes and the effect of the downtime or what breaks. And so uh, in a year, they were able to save across more than one site 16,000 hours of searching and extracting data, which reduced their kind of a variable operating cost of 55%. So that's significant, right? And remind you that these are pioneers in the early days of case studies. So there's room for improvement even still with good results in the initial studies. This is the other case study I referred to in Alto Neuroscience, in which this company wanted to leverage AI for the development of a drug that could help with PTSD and major depressive disorders. So the idea was to have the platform measure brain biomarkers and different sets of data, including EEGs and other brain activity and behavioral patterns. Ultimately, um, they partnered with a mental health startup in order to establish like who would be the right patients and and even do some kind of pre-analysis of brain biomarkers that they thought would be impactful with this drug. Ultimately, they were able to see that these biomarkers define patients saw a greater reduction in depression and PTSD severity compared to those without it. If we back out again a little bit and kind of go back to structure and framework, every company today that has started the journey of AI thinks about different stuff. So in the example of my company is not giving me technology, um, some people get straight to, is the organization ready? That could be ethical concerns, legal concerns on data privacy, security, intellectual property. It may be that some companies wait for there to be regulation. In the United States, there is no regulation by FDA. In the last year, there's been 5 to 6 draft guidances in different areas of wearable AI-enabled medical devices, pharmaceutical manufacturing, discovery, and so forth. The other is validation challenges. Today, I will share a few slides and some, we won't go into great detail, but the references are present. In the one organization I belong to, ISPE, you'll see that they have some GAMP and GAMP AI guides that specifically talk about the revised validation roadmap for AI. It's only one example. People can create their own. And then we'll also talk at the end about future trends. But what this means is that ultimately companies have there's a lot of risk involved. One is their reputation, two is the product quality and safety, and three is the readiness of the organization to withstand regulatory scrutiny while there's no regulation. If you operate or your company operates in other parts of the world, places like Europe have advanced a little quicker, where they have a EU AI Act, they have a Cybersecurity Act, they have Annex 2011 and 22. Annex 22, just in June, there was members of ISP as well as regulators that sat down for one day, and it was presentations of different use cases of AI by industry in a slide deck. And basically, the industry wasn't allowed to ask questions. it was the regulatory agencies asking questions to the industry for 8 hours about different techniques and different questions regarding AI. The purpose of the meeting was to ultimately revise the draft law or future law of Annex 22 that will become law. So what we're going to see in the world is everybody's going to move at a different speed technologically, regulatory compliance, as well as internal adaptation by companies. The more these get commercialized and get advertised in terms of case study, I think will help build confidence as well as cultural awareness. So what we face today is we face new technology and just different types of data. You know, here we have wearable AI devices, we have continuous glucose monitoring devices that are transmitting data to apps that are even being analyzed by sometimes AI and not first the human. And so there's a slew of data sources today, and you know, as you have seen in the statistic I gave you earlier, you know, we've had the evolution of big data for probably a decade now. The main point here is the current FDA regulations talk about data integrity and the quality of the data. This has not changed. The regulation's been in effect like 21 CFR Part 11 for more than 20 years. It means that we need to make sure that the input or the data that's being generated, well, not even generated, but the data that's going into an AI, we have to be able to explain what happens to that data in the middle, as well as build confidence to show that the output is accurate, that there's no hallucination going on, there's no bias, there's no drift in the validation modeling where the AI is learning and starting to change. One example, I can't name the company, but a large public company you may know many years ago was experimenting with AI. And after some time, they found that the AI became racist. And to some degree, the initial data was fine, but as they had a continuous learning model, what occurred is maybe some of the inputs were coming from different southern states in the United States where there was a little more racism, and the AI started using derogatory terms. So it means that ultimately, no matter where this data comes from, whether it's from a sensor that you're wearing on your body or a device or an external system, or it's being trained by a human via machine learning, or it's being scanned by documents that are currently paper. Ultimately, we need to make sure that the integrity of the data, the business output is being met, and ultimately that we're enhancing the outputs and not getting worse data, right? So this is an example of differentiated validation life cycle. This comes from the Good Automated Manufacturing Practices of ISPE, second edition. Basically, what it's saying is the new validation lifecycle to prove or test that something is working needs to be much more agile. We need to make it, because it's making GXP decisions, we need a constant monitoring process and the consumption data. So ultimately, you need a embedded training model, whether it's locked or frozen or continuous, which you'll see examples of next, as well as moving it from concept to training model to the output, right? And it needs as you've seen in previous slide, it needs a tailored approach. This is one example of that, and you'll have this as a take home. This is a further breakdown of it where it talks about different data consumption steps. Where is data consumed? Where is it processed? And what's the outputs? Ultimately, we need to be aware of wherever that data is coming from. We need to maintain the integrity of the data, make sure that it's confident in terms of the output and statistical accuracy and the performance, and ultimately the reliability of the output. Because today, human makes the decision, he approves the output or the decision and signs off. Tomorrow, it can mean something else. So we have to build it where it's confident, right? We're getting equal or better than what we have today. This is just another example from ISP's GAMP. It's a good practice guide on data integrity. It kind of talks about, this is an example of production data and how it moves through the cycle and what needs to occur to that data and the data engineering and the modeling in order to even get to the output of test data. When we look at models for quality, FDA 3 years ago, and there's been 2 updates since then, put out a draft guidance called Computer Software Assurance. It also talks about mitigation of quality assurance and looking at even some models you may use today, like failure mode effective analysis or FMEA, looking at probability of failure, model influence, as well as decision of consequence, right? So we need to decide what's the risk level of the function that we're implementing within the system. For each function, you have to assign a level of risk. Then you also have to decide based on either your own guidance or the FDA CSA draft guidance. It allows you for many avenues of scripting. For low risk, maybe I have a unscripted. It doesn't mean undocumented. It means that I have to show in less ways. Maybe it could pass fail, no evidence, right? Something in between, as well as more robust testing, which if you read the CSA draft guidance, it'll walk through different cases as well as different types of avenues of ability to test or reduce testing. So ultimately, if we look at and remember, many of the AI models are built on machine learning first, right? Even in today's organizations, we're looking at creating model training in order to have model testing. Ultimately, we have to have a monitoring system as well. It's not I just tested and I'm done. I don't have to look at it again until I make a change. No, I think the future will be continuous learning and continuous validated environments where it's self-testing itself as it makes changes, right? It has an online change control. Ultimately, what we look for is this is just a bigger description of this that kind of walks you through what happens to that data. This is the SDLC or software development lifecycle that takes data. It has different user stories of what the user wants, how you're going to script that, and as well as be able to build the use case. How do you train the data to the machine, as well as what's the level of testing that has to be deployed at the unit level, as well as user testing in order to accept it. Then you can kind of go to production, and this is more of the testing production, not the release into production of the software. That will take its normal course, but this is kind of the steps beforehand. So we have about 12 minutes left. I'd like to just quickly go through some of the PQE case studies that we've done. Each of them, we'll cover them in a high level as well as with some specificity. The first one was a top 10 pharma company. I have to keep these companies anonymous, but a top 10 pharma company. In this case, it was done in Italy, and we were looking to trend using a system called Trendify. It was a validated system that automatically detected out of trend and environmental data. Again, at the beginning of this talk, we talked about contamination, environmental data, depending on if you're in a sterile environment or something less. It still is quite critical in ensuring the environmental conditions, whether it's temperature, pressure, humidity, cleanliness. These all become important. Ultimately, the AI is able to look through the technology and the software, as well as the data that's being generated, and flag to the human when something is starting to go sour or even before it goes sour. This is kind of an overview of what happened. We took an external data lake from a laboratory information management system, combined with an ML/AI algorithm and a user interface where, very simply put, there's a control panel that the user can see where there's certain flags that are being escalated to the human that they need to zero in and pay attention to something that's starting to not look so right. This is a further breakdown of validation deliverables in that AI model that looks at the learning technical design specification. How do we actually design the requirements and the validation plan? And in this case, there was also vendor assessment that's involved. I cannot emphasize enough how important, if it's an external tool or technology, that you perform a proper technology vendor audit. Once you have a good vendor audit that has an established design and quality and infrastructure, then that's been deduced already by the audit. You can leverage that documentation with FDA CSA draft guidance to minimize the amount of testing, especially if it's a cloud-based software or SaaS, software as a service or SaaS solution. They're specifically talked about in the guidance. So as you saw in a couple slides ago, I talked about functional risk, looking at the design, the functional risk, as well as the ultimate machine learning algorithm testing, as well as the user testing to make sure that those functions are meeting the intended original use of the function. Ultimately, the validation processes have to be focused in order to verify that the outputs are accurate. In the future, there's already been some companies in the US that have been cited with warning letters overutilizing AI. It wasn't about the AI, it was about them not following current regulations, which more or less for key critical attributes of documents such as batch records, procedures, and other critical laboratory data, a human has to approve it. QA has to sign it. And so they were creating specs generated by AI with no human in the loop, and hence why they were cited. Another example of a top 10 pharma, in this case it was in the US, we applied a system called pharmacovigilance AI. Our company had designed a validation process termed PVAI in order to have optical character recognition, or OCR. This is basically an automatized learning process that can analyze paper or any scan data and extract. In this case, it was utilized for adverse events monitoring. It's able to extract what the issue is from unstructured and semi-structured source documents, eliminating manual workflow, a human looking through. Matt, remember the example of a company having 10,000 complaints a month? Imagine how much paperwork that is. So an AI can quickly look at it, determine where the risk level is, what the adverse event is. It can then take that and output and connect to a safety database and automatically populate pharmacovigilance or safety data into that database and then flag it to the human. So again, these examples I've given you so far in this lecture have been about the ease of analysis utilizing tools in order to assist the human in making decisions and actions that are more critical in nature. The next example, we'll talk about R&D machine learning and AI. This was about looking at scientific data and the research process using an AI/ML based tool for R&D data. And ultimately what it did is it was able to analyze oodles of data quickly in order to give conclusions to the human to make decisions on success or results. The next example looks at data analytics validation. This was a global organization. And what we did here is we implemented an automated ecosystem to execute data analytics in supply chain. So very specifically, companies often are looking at supply chain analytics in order to optimize the manufacturing process. How many do I need to make to ensure it's receiving the patients in a timely fashion? And over the last year, there's been, even in the United States, without naming companies, there's been dams that broke, hurricanes that damaged facilities, and there was global shortages for 6 months, right? So these are things that help in order to even estimate where work can be increased at other facilities in order to meet the demand of the market. And I think we have a couple more. So this one is a multi-site, multi-regional in different parts of the world, a validation strategy for AI that looked at a software called Simca. This was basically a data lake that looks at batch monitoring and batch control. So ultimately, we're looking at those multivariate analyses in batch data and the quality and attributes of products in order to optimize the products that are being manufactured through ML and AI. Sorry, I think I might have skipped one there. So this also was with the same company. You can see here, this is quite interesting. Um, we've done some case studies for APQR, generating APQR more than 2 years ago, as you see here. It doesn't mean the human doesn't have to look at it. Of course, they will. It's just showing the capability. Looking at labs or drug substance quality, we have a software that's an AI that's confident enough in order to be able to do autonomous release if needed of AI of drug substance. So in this case, humans still looked at it. Similarly, we looked at CAPA review boards. There's use cases that I didn't discuss today, but where it can look at, do root cause analysis, tell you what the historical human has decided in terms of similar investigations or CAPAs, and determine root cause as well as what's the real corrective action. So ultimately, in closing, if we look at AI, I think this is future state. It doesn't mean it's happening next year. It means that I think in the future we'll have superhuman AI that can detect even quality defects by 99, almost be flawless. I think that production lines in the future will adjust themselves in real time. That the operating parameters will have some boundaries, and the machine can change itself based on those boundaries, right? Ultimately, if you've not studied it, it's a separate seminar, but I think if you have not heard of the word, go research it. But eventually, we'll have virtualized environments of digital twins from end to end, from research to clinic to pharmacovigilance to manufacturing to adverse events and market information to tell us when something is going wrong early in the life cycle or at the end of the life cycle, and all be interconnected data streams that will be able to flag the human. Ultimately, I think in the future, AI is already being trained on warning letters, regulatory enforcement actions internationally. I think in the future, you can take more than your internal audits. You can take your internal audits, combine them with regional and regulatory inspectional data, and kind of tell you what the government agency may look at when they come in for your next inspection. Ultimately, I think we're going to have even more personalized medicine in the future that's going to support better decision making and better creation of formulations for different regional medicines, different patient populations. The same drug may not work the same for different ethnicities, different cultures, different parts of the world. And so I think that's where we're headed. Ultimately, I think, and I put a little asterisk here. Again, I'm not saying there won't be a human in the future. What I'm saying is that some things can be done autonomously in the future, where the human is then put on the complex problem solving attributes. So that is it. There's my contact information. I will stop sharing to see if we have some questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wally, and let's give a big round of applause to our phenomenal Innovation Division speaker today. So we have, let's see, a question coming in from John McCaffrey. Given that some pharma companies have always been cited, are you concerned that too much emphasis will be placed on AI instead of the human?
So I work with companies that are often cited. That means that the quality culture is lacking, right? So culture is culture, whether using technology or not. So you have to improve your quality culture your roadmap of what do you do when something goes wrong, whether the humans involved or AI. I think in some cases, last year I traveled to India and I saw some companies that were often cited. And honestly, when I was looking at batch records in manufacturing, I will tell you that in some cases, the the AI applied to the first phase of analysis of the data being generated can help actually avoid or would highly reduce some of those gaps and things that are cited during inspection. So I think in those cases, it actually could be helpful.
Thank you so much. We have maybe one final question for you. Maybe looking at quality's role in AI. Quality professionals have, to your point, traditionally been focused on process improvement, risk reduction, as well as learning new skills and competencies around AI. As you see the quality profession evolving and increasingly integrating AI, what are the core capabilities or value add that you think they can bring to the table?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. This is not a hi, I'm an AI expert and quality doesn't know anything. In the end, this is a journey together, no matter what your background or discipline or your job title is. It means that the culture needs to understand what's the use case, how it should be not only be validated, but also what is the output it's doing or the decision it may be assisting with, but also the human in the loop has to understand the framework and the technology and how do I evaluate if it's working right, how it's performing. So the first thing I would say today, if you've not started upskilling yourself, then you should start. There's plenty of free courses out there from Google, from Snowflake. You can even go into ChatGPT and ask it to create you a 6-week course on cybersecurity, machine learning, AI, and even fine tune your prompt. Tell it, I'm a quality professional. What things do I need to learn? So ultimately, I think today what people need to do is start understanding, research read the draft guidances by FDA, read the EU AI Act, read Annex 22. It will give you current operational thinking of the government. Today I've shown you various case studies. It's something you can look up. Many of these are public, right? This is not in some secret closet that I dug it out of. So um, definitely stay connected to what the news is sharing. Participate in, not to push it too much, but I'm going to push it. In as part of American Society for Quality or other professional societies, get engaged with digital validation, with AI committees, with innovation divisions. Why? Because these topics are being discussed. These guidelines and guidances and documents are being created. These webinars are being created based on facts, not based on theory. And so I think that cumulative effect will help you be different than maybe some of your peers. And ultimately, some of the analyses of so far in terms of literacy and education and skills in the marketplace, some of the recent studies have said those that start upskilling themselves today will be secure for the future. Those that are maybe not, let's say if somebody enters the market and they're not so skilled in even AI and they're not skilled in industry, then maybe the desire for junior people will dissipate because we need advanced thinking as well as advanced technology use, but it starts with learning, whether it comes from yourself, your organization, or your interaction with professional societies.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Walia, for a phenomenal presentation today. We're so grateful for those that could attend across the world. On behalf of our ASQ Innovation Division officers, our chair, Miss Jackie Jolly, our chair-elect, Miss Sonia Montera, of course, our Mr. Walia, our secretary, and our immediate past chair, Mr. Tracy Owens. We thank you for joining us today, and we welcome you to our upcoming events. July 23rd, from Quality Systems to Innovation Systems. August 13th, why quality professionals are perfectly positioned to lead AI implementations, and September 24th, From Insights to Impact, using the Organizational Excellence Framework for Success. Again, thank you so much for attending today. We will follow up with a packet of our wonderful speakers deck, as well as many other things such as the recording, and we look forward to being able to serve you again at the end of July. Again, thank you to our phenomenal speaker. Have a safe and wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Rhonda. Wonderful. Have a nice weekend.
Bless you. Thank you. You too, sir.
Thank you.